it's the pricing. It's the pricing. Like I find it's less likely that I'm sitting there with like, oh, I was going to take 5 running backs, but God, here I am, sitting at like 140 and Bashaw Tootin stare me in the face. So I'm gonna take him. Maybe if he fumbles again, that'll happen. But for now, we're not really seeing that. So I'm letting the prices kind of push me off of like what I used to think. Like I would never have taken a third with an elite, but if you're gonna like give me a big time price discount on where I think this guy's efficiently priced, then why wouldn't I do that? And then I can see how it would actually work and play out. It's not like a wasted pick.
All right, Pat, we're back. One little mini hiatus. It's been a chaotic start to the summer. I got sick. You got sick. I had a birthday. We had a tornado. Your hair is all over the place. It's been
better than it was a couple minutes ago. I'll tell you that.
It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but I'm excited to dig in today to a topic that I particularly enjoy because we hear a ton, especially over the last several years, about a term that people would call roster construction in best ball, right? It comes from DFS, it comes from season long, and in best ball, how we put our rosters together. People often think about it as, right, okay, tell me how many quarterbacks to draft, tell me how many tight ends to draft, and that's certainly part of it. But what I like to think about it as, and we did a similar thing last year, is applying that kind of principle, right? How many running backs to draft, how many wide receivers to draft, but to this year's current market. Right, like it changes. If you love Brock Bowers this year, like I think both of us do, if you love Trey McBride this year or George Kittle, how you want to construct a roster ideally on a decent chunk of your teams is very different than if you loved Brock Bowers last year in round 10, or you loved Sam Laporta a couple years ago in round 14, right? That how we put those things together are very, very different. And I think this year is maybe the strangest year at least for me, in drafts. I still feel like I'm figuring out exactly how I want to put together teams, because
last year was pretty strange too. We're in 2 strange years. Yeah.
Last year was strange, but in the way of like, okay, this wide receiver shit is just absolutely like out of control. And so it was all about navigating that. This year, we're kind of like in the middle of some of the old years and last year. And then we have
it's a little off last year, but it's still pretty high.
It's definitely still high. But also, like, to me, feels like a unique rookie class, like unique quarterback situation. We've been arguing about the Sam Howells and the Drake Mays and stuff for years, and we may not spend that much time on quarterbacks after Bryce Young or Geno.
Yeah. There's guys though. I mean, we'll talk about it, but it is interesting. I just drafted a team that had Anthony Richardson and Aaron Rodgers on it, so it's not. Yeah, it's a Burrow team, and then I'm like,
you need a darkness retreat now after drafting that team.
They were both stacked, okay? Pittman and Freiermuth. Don't worry about it.
Aaron Rodgers is not on the Steelers, okay? Technically, so also.
Well, no, they're stacked because Freiermuth is doing a darkness retreat.
He might be, if the Jonnu rumors are apparently true. Freiermuth might be heading out for a darkness retreat.
It wasn't true. That was Jonnu said I'd like more money, and the Dolphins said, okay, well, we could send you to Pittsburgh and you can play with Arthur Smith again, and maybe they'll give you more money. Do you want that? And he said, no, it's okay. That's the.
We don't have any more, right? We don't have any more. We spent it all, so you can either stay here or you can
play
go
for Arthur Smith.
Yeah, and he's no, thank you.
That was the Dolphins being like Jonnu Smith's dad. We're like, oh, sure, yeah, go play for Arthur Smith. Then he's got a ton of money.
That is definitely the 1990s parent that was like, fine, go get a job, go do, you want to, you want to feed yourself, you want to do, you think I'm such a bad dad, like go see what it's like, that was definitely,
that's what they did. And Jonnu said, the reports out of Jonnu's camp was that his quote preference was to play for the Dolphins. His quote preference was to eat what was being served tonight and not
Yes.
make his own dinner.
Yes. My preference was not to eat broccoli, but when the alternative was to go figure it out on my own, I definitely chose to eat that broccoli. But somehow this turned into Aaron Rodgers and Jonnu Smith and Pittsburgh Steelers. But nonetheless, I do think this is kind of a funky year, and I'm curious your thoughts. This we've talked about this a lot, and we did a similar show last year. But you just wrote a piece about kind of your draft plan, and I think those two things go hand in hand in terms of how we want to construct rosters, because of like what pockets of the draft do we like certain positions, what players are just like targets for us, and all that kind of stuff. So if you kind of wanted to kick off like a high level what you're thinking about this year, I think that'll get us going.
Yeah, the most basic level, which I think if you're listening to this, you're past, is like, how many tight ends do I take? How many receivers do I take? Right. And then it's like, well, that depends on how much draft capital you spend at every position. And so then, right. But then there's the third level, which is kind of what I wrote about, where you're like, you're trying to build in an environment where, because the third level a couple years ago was, let's layer on all these structures that we know, like, here's just hyper fragile, here's what it looks like. Here's zero running back, here's what it looks like. Here's zero running back, here's what it looks like, right? But what the current pricing has done is made that harder to do. And so I'm in my draft plan, I was trying to think through like some of the structural elements that we know from those strategies, is like, the dead zone was really about overdrafting a certain type of running back profile. Um, like going zero running backs, really about making sure you aren't passing up on elite wide receiver firepower in the name of running back scarcity. Like that. So there's like things there's lessons there, but then as the ADP gets scrambled, trying to like find where, like trying to reassemble like a coherent sort of structural strategy with the lessons of what we've learned from past structures in different ADP environments. And so it gets a little more complicated. But basically the framework that I used is just, what can I get later? The simple framework, just the whole time, what can I get later? Well, how is this compared to what I have available in later rounds at this position? How am I going to be able to structure this team by building in my knowledge of the available player pool later, and the types of profiles that offers. So that's something where, like, in some cases I think the running backs are a little bit undervalued. In some cases I think maybe they seem undervalued, but I'm not sold that they're undervalued, and that's why I'd rather just bet on the receiver upside. But it's a really interesting year because, like, in round 5, you've got guys that are like underpriced veteran profiles at running back. You also have RJ Harvey, and you've got Travion Henderson going in the 5-6 turn area, maybe even the mid 6 sometimes, and then Judkins and Caleb Johnson kind of 6-7. So they're right next to guys like Pollard and Swift and James Conner and Montgomery are kind of all in that general range. So there's like, you can say running backs undervalued, but what does that even mean? Are you talking about like this incredible running back class, or are you talking about building in some of that running back volume, that projectable volume that maybe has gotten a little bit too underpriced now in a best ball setting? For a redraft setting, I don't think it has. For a redraft setting, give me the rookies, man. Give me the rookies. Give me wide receiver upside. But for best ball, we do know that, like, having Alvin Kamara, even though he didn't finish the season, like, that was still quite helpful because he was a straight up like mid-level RB1 all year. So
how'd you get to Bucky? How did you bide your time for Bucky to come
the premium
through?
chaperone? The premium chaperone. Yeah,
the all pair.
So I just went through my draft plan was just going round by round, talking about kind of positionally where my head is at in this ADP environment. But I do think that this will change. I'm going to write, I call it my early summer best ball draft plan. I'm going to do a late summer best ball draft plan. And I expect it to look pretty different because the late rounds will be pretty different. We'll have running backs that we now know are great picks. We're going to have guys in like round 13 that are maybe with round 15, 16 ADPs, but we're just like hammering them around 13, 14, like, get this guy on my team. The Jordan Mason from last year, the way we should have handled Kyron a couple years ago. So I think that will change things. That will actually make me like a little less interested in some of the running back bets if I feel like I think it depends how it all shakes out in the pricing, but that has the potential to make me feel like, hey, maybe I actually am gonna attack running back with volume a little bit more. But I know who those people are. I don't know who the people are right now, so it's hard to attack with volume.
I love that because of like how you framed it in the, I'm a big proponent, and this is not some novel concept, but the back to front drafting,
Yeah.
and that has been,
Which I know in the piece. I mean, all this stuff's like old as hell, like back to front drafting, arbitrage. It's all old
we
concepts.
just it's all the same things that we kind of keep bringing to and revitalize, right? We're like renovating them a little bit, right? They're the same thing,
We're sprucing them up.
Yeah, exactly. It was a beautiful home in the 80s, but it needs a little modern amenities. But I genuinely do think that, like, and you hit on it as well in the piece, where like there are certain times where the arbitrage idea is great in theory, but you also still like you can't arbitrage everything. You know what I mean? Like if you can't arbitrage your way out of a good team. You know what I mean? It's like you can have all the best picks later, but if you didn't construct the team in totality to where it all fit, all right, like the Bucky things, like you could have 50% Bucky last year and still like not advance very many teams because it took time to get Bucky there. And it's like, cool, you identified like one of the best picks on the entire board.
Bucky's such a good example because he really was like almost like to a comical degree. Like he will come on at the very end of the season and just be the guy you need. But he wasn't really. It wasn't like he was zeros until then, but he wasn't an advance rate monster, right? Like
we didn't talk for multiple months about Bucky being like, holy shit, what a smash, right? It was like interesting. It was like this interesting thing. He like you said, he wasn't taking zeros, but you weren't like, oh,
you were pretty. We were pretty like we were getting the like.
It wasn't.
I'm gonna want Bucky. I'm gonna want Bucky.
You started to see it because you were like very quickly. Everyone could see like when Rashad White would get a series and then Bucky would get a series. You're like, oh, okay, I think we all see what's going on here. But it wasn't like, holy shit, Kyren Williams just had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 1 and he's the starter. And oh my god, like Puka gets 20 targets in week 1. Like it wasn't that kind of thing where we were just like, the price was so wrong immediately. Who cares?
Yeah.
So the back to front like drafting thing for me is that is generally how I try to come into this concept. And the running back part of it, I think, is so fascinating because specific to underdog, let's just use underdog, but I think it kind of applies generally across all of best ball, is people will say with all this, the last 3 years of wide receiver ADP movement have created value, right? Like you said, air quotes value. What does that mean? Is RJ Harvey the value or is Alvin Kamara the value? Those are wildly different concepts, but it does create running back air quotes value, I think. But when running back as a whole, as a position is undervalued, and on underdog being half PPR, running backs are more valuable, generally speaking, from just a point scoring perspective, right? The receptions of a wide receiver and tight end cannot offset the touchdowns and yardage as much from a running back. So, like, what does that mean? People be like, well, we got to get these stud running backs, and like the stud running backs do get a boost, but all running backs get a boost in this scenario, right? It's not only the fact that Joe Mixon is undervalued, right? Like Tyler Algier is undervalued, and some form of Cowboys running back is undervalued. Probably some Jaguars running back is undervalued. There's just like undervalued running backs littered across the board. And so the back to front drafting thing for me is still where I lean into, not necessarily zero running back, but like the best picks are generally these running backs in the mid to late rounds, because as we move on, their undervaluedness or whatever like pops even more than the undervaluedness of the early running backs.
Although that's a mistake I made last year where I was like thinking that, okay, you can get Josh Jacobs in the 4th or 5th. You can get James Cook in the 5th. You can get Kenneth Walker, the 5-6. Connor was more like 6. I guess he moved up, but he for a while he was like 6-7. Yeah. Connor was actually one I was into. Connor would have been part of my case of like, well, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to take Connor.
Right.
I'm going to see Kamara and pass on him. I'm going to take Jalen Warren. I'm going to take some of these. Who are some of the other guys in kind of that range? But that's where I was living. I was living in like that 8-9
Warren,
range.
Najee, Swift.
Yeah, I took some Najee. I took
Kind of a lot of the same names.
Yes, a lot of the same names. Yeah. Brian Robinson was a guy I was taking a lot of. I would wait and take Dowdle, or maybe not wait, but Dowdle would be a big part of the mix for me. So I was like, I don't need to take these running back. The thing about taking a Kamara, well, maybe not. Again, Kamara is just passing on at good prices. But if I'm taking like Josh Jacobs, I'm giving up too much at receiver. So I'm going to beat those teams. They think they're getting the running back values, but they're actually too thin at receiver, and I'm going to beat them with my round 5 receiver or they're my round 4 receiver, and then still get underpriced running back production. But the problem was that receiver pricing had gone so out of control that like the cliff had come and gone.
Right.
I wasn't actually. I should have. The thing that I'm trying to think more about this year is who can score like an RB1, who can actually produce, who's going to be like in the dailies, going to be among the top, like when there's bye weeks,
right?
Who's like the 104, like that's a dude who maybe I don't want to arbitrage as much. Again, if that guy costs like the 208, okay,
Right.
I'd probably rather take a receiver. But if he only costs like a 5th round pick, why do I need to arbitrage that?
Yeah.
And Kamara's another guy. He's the grossest click, but he's a good pick in the 6th. He's a good pick in the 6th, I think. I hate saying it.
I like him a little more, as everyone does, right? This is like saying
you like him on DraftKings.
You like James White more on a PPR site, like no fucking shit, like obviously. But I do have some like
he scored really well in half PPR last year.
I know he did, but there was buoyed a lot by the kind of early, like you said, early season stuff that I'm very concerned about. The replication with Tyler Shuck back there, and I, as much as we hate Derek Carr, like there's a certain level of competence. Shuck. Yeah, there's a certain level, and they're like the same age basically. So there's a certain level of competence that
they're the same
with the. I mean, Tyler Shuck,
one just medically retired.
Shuck
probably came close to medically retiring. In
probably not. He's one injury away from medically retiring. The Saints, apparently, that's a big thing. Olave's probably one away as well, the whole Saints organization. But I totally agree with you. I think that's it's like I started to take my medicine on that last year. Like I got overweight Joe Mixon last year. But it was like I had tunnel vision for the Mixon part of it. And didn't apply the same principle you just outlined well enough, like across the board. Like I took my medicine on, like historically, right? I would have been like James Conner, Najee. I know Najee like wasn't great or anything like that, but like James Conner, Najee, Brian Robinson, like these are boring ass names. I'm gonna chase the sexy, young, upside, we haven't seen it yet type guys. And I was like, no, if this running back whole pocket is like the thing, I'm gonna sprinkle it around. And I started to come to, but with moving that, right, like you said, I don't have to always arbitrage Joe Mixon. I can just fucking take Joe Mixon, because the 5th round wide receiver is like, what am I even getting as a 5th round wide receiver last year? I feel a little bit like that this year, not quite so much, but I am mixing and matching my running back stuff more. But the priority for me from a roster construction perspective is still early wide receiver. That could be Bijan. I could take Bijan. I could take Gibbs. I could take JT. I could take whatever. I can still take that guy, but the priority still is just remembering that, like, the later you're gonna get into the double-digit rounds and you're gonna like the running back better. Like it's just gonna happen. So just keeping that in mind is still like a big pillar of how I'm putting my teams together.
I completely agree. I do just want to like underline that this is my best ball draft plan. And I think one of the things that, when like as we keep doing this, redraft and best ball should become like more and more separate, especially when we're talking about like tournament best ball. You got to win these massive prizes. You got to win the single elimination weeks. Like we're going to get better at this game over time, and it will divorce itself more and more from how we play redraft. One of the things that I really am starting to believe is like, in redraft, you're hunting for the dudes that you can start every week. And I think like taking more risk at running back really makes more sense there, because you can find guys on waivers, you can piece it together, and like when you find a guy, that's your guy. You're going to be starting him, and you're going up against someone who picked their starter too. So like there's, you start more receivers, you start fewer running backs generally. And so like you basically you take the risk, you take your lumps, you find your dude, you get him in, you get into the playoffs, and now you've got just an insane starting lineup because you have that firepower at receiver that no one can match, and you've managed to figure it out at running back. That doesn't have to be zero running back, it can be any kind of number of things, but generally kind of taking on more risk at running back I think makes sense. And then some of these profiles that provide you sort of steady production are just less valuable because your roster isn't locked all season. The thing for me is like,
would you say, sorry to cut you off, just like while my brain thinking about what you're saying is like the fewer redraft roster spots I have to even like consider who I'm starting, like the fewer the better, right? It's like I don't care who Brian Thomas is playing. I don't care who CeeDee Lamb is playing. I don't care who Drake London is playing, right? And then, right, a couple years, like I didn't care who Bucky was playing last year. It took a while to figure out to get Bucky into that thing. Maybe you picked up Kyron off waivers right after week 1, or you picked up Chuba off waivers, or you drafted Chuba late, right? But like once it's learned, it's like, I don't know, I maybe am debating my last flex spot on FFPC.
Right.
The rest is just locked in, whereas we don't have that concern in best ball.
And you do have the project, like we started actually the funny thing is we didn't start Tajay Spears in the week that he went off in a main, but we were like debating, like, do we start Spears? Do we start Javonte? There's like that projectable element. And unfortunately we started Javonte. But but we got close to starting Spears in his spike week. It's not like as much of a guessing game. It's still somewhat of a, you're not going to start sit stuff, drive people crazy. You put the wrong guy in all the time. It's not as easy as like, oh, just start the right running backs every week. But there is that element where it's not like totally random when running back scoring happens. We can see like, oh, this guy's out. Like Zach Charbonnet, you're going to know which weeks to start him in redraft. And, having him as like this premium upside piece on a redraft roster is like one of your, like Zach Charbonnet is your RB1 on a redraft roster. Cool. Like let's go. That sounds fun to me. Like we can, did I push it a little too far? Maybe, but like I bet I can make that team work even in this environment. In best ball, giving up those points on a roster that locks is gonna, it's like, why? What? You're not probably gaining enough to make that happen. The thing that I've pushed back on in the past is like when this argument was, and therefore you should take Mike Davis, the new starter, we think maybe probably for the Falcons, who stinks, has never done anything, is super fragile. So take him in the 5th round because you need starting points. Take Alexander Madison, a career backup who's not efficient, but he's on the Vikings and he'll just score like Dalvin Cook used to. Don't worry about it. Like those types of guys in like the 5th or 6th round, like I just am. That is not what I'm arguing for. But I'm arguing for guys who, I'm trying to be more open-minded to the Joe Mixons of the world, where it's like, I don't know, man, this guy was an RB10 in points per game last year, and he's got Woody Marks, who's, I think, pretty bad competing with him. And honestly, not just pretty bad, but like clearly a 3rd down back. You blow on him and he falls over. Like he's not taking Joe Mixon's rushing job. He's just not. No one else on that team looks like a realistic candidate to do that. So Joe Mixon stays healthy. Does Joe Mixon bury me in the 5th round by staying healthy? Like he might. That's all it takes. Like then why not? Why am I gonna fade him then? Why not just be like, all right, Joe Mixon is a good pick in the 5th round, I guess. I wish he wasn't going here because I don't like taking Joe Mixon.
We don't have to like it. You don't have to fucking like it. It just, the truth can be the truth.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I was always like, because I don't like this,
Yeah.
we were just like rejecting it, right? Like putting the fucking blinders on and just being
Yeah.
like because this last year and this year's version of Joe Mixon historically was like a second round pick in fantasy. And so it was just like, no, come on. Like,
Yeah.
I get, you're like, I get it. Like he's going to probably, like you said, he's going to be a top 10, top 15 running back. Cool. But I don't need to spend the second round pick on that. But now we're talking in the 5th round. I already got 3 superstar wide receivers and Trey McBride on my team.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you did the thing. You got the wide receiver firepower. You got the edge at tight
Well,
end.
did you? Because that's one of the things that am struggling with this year and trying to be a little bit more open-minded about in this environment is that maybe you didn't get the wide receiver firepower where you got some, like let's say you took what draft slot do I want to be on? Let's say you're out of like the 3 and you get Justin Jefferson and then you take Trey McBride and then you take Rashee Rice.
Right.
Okay.
One of my favorite starts.
Yeah, it's a fun start. Then in the 4th round, let's just reach and take Mixon, okay, just to illustrate the point. And then you take Jalen Hurts in the 5th round, just because he shouldn't be there.
Shouldn't be there.
Pretty sweet. But now you've got elite tight end, elite quarterback, 1 running back, 2 receivers through 5. In round 6 in the past, I think I'd have been like, I have to take a receiver here. But I don't know that I like have to. I think I want 1 receiver in the next 2 picks probably, but what if like Travion Henderson falls to me there? Can I do it? Can I take him? Like and the reason that I think maybe I can is because I can get a receiver in the 7th that's okay. You know, I can get like a Shakir or something, you know, or whoever else. That's not that different from who I would have taken in the 6th, probably. I can get in the 8th, I can get a Burden, or I could get maybe even the 9th, I could get a Pittman who's a starting receiver. I could, you know, there's lots of dudes who you're like, I don't think these guys are that different from who's available in round 6, actually. So why do I have to take them? Why can't I just take the running back? That's kind of where I'm starting to get to with this, that like, I would prefer to have 3 wide receivers through 5, which has been kind of like one of the big golden rules. But it's because I like three straight receiver starts a lot.
Yeah.
Like I really like 3 X receiver starts quite a bit. But I also like the elite tight ends, and I'm fine going like receiver, tight end, receiver. That's cool too. But the pricing has changed enough to where I'm starting to wonder about like, what a 2 receivers through 6 rounds. Like, what about those types of builds? Is that okay in this pricing? You're putting stress on the roster, and I think you're gonna have to draft aggressively at receiver at some point. But I think it might be okay.
So it's funny you say that, because I was gonna like devil's advocate myself because of one specific thing that applies to this year that did not apply to last year, where I felt so comfortable, and it did lead me astray a little bit, kind of, but I also think it was generally right, is that pocket we talked about from David Montgomery. So let's get after the Mixon, Ken Walker range or whatever, from David Montgomery down to like Chase Brown, who I know he rose up a lot, but was originally like in the 120s, right? You could call it Dowdle too if you wanted to, whatever. That
was another guy who we did take. Which was nice last year.
It was like, I mean, there were a lot of good picks in that. Like David Montgomery was good. James Conner was good.
Yeah,
like
there were actually a lot. That pocket was good.
It was just good. Wasn't... We were right. It just the way that the combination.
We were right to target. We weren't right to target it exclusively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To just like keep hitting our head again, into the wall. Of that is Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. Like that didn't go so well. But it was because like Justin Jefferson didn't quite get to where he wanted to. Tyreek Hill was a disaster, right? Like it was like Marvin Harrison was a disaster. Drake London was just like whatever. It was like it wasn't that we were wrong about that pocket. It was the combination of Saquon is burying those early wide receivers, right? Gibbs is burying, especially in the playoffs, those early wide receivers. JT's burying those guys. It was if you didn't have Jamar Chase, like you were really swimming upstream against the running backs. Your running backs were fine. It was just that you weren't beating them at wide receiver.
That's right.
Last year. This year, I don't feel like that about that pocket. And so your point about like that pulling that up a little bit and being more flexible about the wide receiver firepower thing, I do really love. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but there's what I would call the truly elite wide receivers, wherever the hell you want to draw that line. Everybody's going to have a different one, right? Is it Mike Evans?
Actually,
Is
I
it
adjusted
Rashee
the
Rice?
rankings in the. I completely agree.
It like once we get to Worthy or T Mac or DJ Moore or something, I'm like,
I think it happens even earlier.
yeah, but like there's somewhat right. We can draw the line wherever we want, but there's a cliff kind of that. After that, I'm like to your point, like do I have to take the wider like that feels like finally learning the lesson that we didn't maybe learn last year, where it was like we just like no, we have to take the wide receiver, and it's like yeah, but this wide receiver kind of stinks, right? Take like you got good wide receivers,
Isn't that
right?
bad?
You took Malik Neighbors and Lab McConkey, right? Like you got some good wide receivers. You can take some more later. You don't have to take, Travis Hunter, who might play fucking corner. We don't got to do that thing again. But there's just a weirdness of kind of like the third to fourth round, some drop off, and then you combine it with that pocket that last year had all these hits, right? Just like, and I'm not trying to like, I do like I love Travion Henderson. Like we don't got to get into that. Tony Pollard's one of my highest draft, but like I know Swift. Like again, I'm not trying to make this a player take thing, but like Aaron Jones, Pacheco, B-Rob at a much heftier price now.
Those
year,
those are the guys I'm not as into,
right?
Because those feel more like the RB2s. Like
exactly.
Brian Robinson. What's Brian Robinson's gonna be an RB1 for me? Like
never, ever.
Yeah. So that's where more like Brian Robinson as he moves up. Brian Robinson's actually one of the biggest fades we've got in the ranks now. And I was into Robinson last year, but he's up to 89 now in underdog ADP. And
right, you get him like a 110 last year. Now he's in the 80s.
Yeah, and Pacheco's right next to him.
I think it's because look at this range. It's like the Giants. We just like dropped these guys in because we did kind of price up the slightly more known. I don't mean price up relative to last year. I just mean it's like, okay, Mixon, Harvey, Chuba, Walker, Kamara, Henderson, Connor. We're like, that's the range where we're like, yeah, like there's the upside rookies. There's these like guys I feel really good about, right? Like Chuba and Mixon and Kamara are going to come out of the gate swinging. Cool. Like, got it. But then you get into a little bit dicier rookies, right? Judkins, Caleb Johnson. Cool. I like them too. I like Tony Pollard. But now we're into the vets that are like, I don't know what to do here, but we can't just like not have a running back for 3 rounds. So we just put some guys in there.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like this new weird dead zone where, to your point, now, like I if I just drafted like I would always draft, right? Draft a bunch of receivers, maybe take an elite tight end, maybe take an elite quarterback. I don't have a running back by round 7 or 8. It's like now, like Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson, like the fucking Giants running backs, the Cam Scadaboo, and like I like them fine, like in a vacuum. But like Cam Scadaboo, Tyrone Tracy, I mean, I love Jordan Mason, but Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, like this is not the same thing as last year where there was like, I don't know, man. I know Warren is there again, but we've learned new information. It's like I don't have any name there that I'm just like I love like a collection of these guys. I could build a whole running back room out of this group. So it changes the dynamic for me like wildly. Last year, that running back range was arguably the biggest reason why I drafted the way that I did. Because I'm like, I don't know exactly who it's going to be, but there's a bunch of names here that are going to pop. And they did, right? Connor, Chase Brown, whatever, Brian Robinson. This year, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I get to the 80s at running back and I'm like, why don't I just wait? Right. That is the part where the back to front. And I'm like, when I get to the 80s of running back, why wouldn't I just take a Jags guy at pick 130? Right. Why don't I just take Tootin at pick 125? Or why don't I take a handcuff like Algier? Why don't I take whatever later? So that kind of informs my like, maybe I do take maybe wide receivers in this pocket or quarterback in this pocket, because I kind of don't like the tight ends either. It's like this is like a really sweet quarterback range, and I think you are as well. We're really far ahead on like this quarterback range: Purdy, May, Nix, Herbert, whatever.
Big time.
Let's take the quarterbacks here. Why the fuck do I have to take Aaron Jones? Like, just take the quarterbacks here, or a wide receiver, right? Take Golden or Trey Harris or whoever, right? Take your wide receivers here, which then informs like, okay, maybe we should take Mixon. Maybe we should take, a running back that we would not have historically taken because of the concerns about it. It's kind of this push-pull of like rounds 3 to 8 actually kind of define how you put your teams together.
Yeah, and I think, if you just think about, because you said you can wait at running back, which is true, but, you're going to need some running backs before those late rounds. So it's like, when do you want to take them? And if you look at like 2v2s, like think about Kenneth Walker, who's got an ADP of 58, or Chuba Hubbard. Take your preference there. Pretty similar, in certain ways. 56.8 ADP for him. So you take one of those two running backs in the late 5th, or you could take Jalen Waddle, right? You could take, Chris Olave. You could take let's just say that Walker and it is on one side and Waddle's on the other of the 2v2. And then you go down and you say on the Walker side, you get Josh Downs, who goes pick 90. And then on the Waddle side, you get Isaiah Pacheco or Brian Robinson. So you're telling me that Isaiah Pacheco and Jalen Waddle is going to outscore Kenneth Walker and Josh Downs? Like, I think I want the Walker downside of that 2v2 every time. Like, that's where I'm like, what have I gained at receiver by staying on track or staying ahead of the Avalanche? Like, what if the Avalanche happened already and we're like under the snow? Like, this, I'm going to stay ahead by taking
the 4th round.
Waddle
Got buried by the Avalanche. It's over. You're out of it.
It was like the number 4 option on his team last year.
It's shining in the 5th round. There is no more Avalanche, right? The snow has melted in the 5th round.
So I don't know. I mean, it's not just Mixon. It's not just Kamara. You do have Walker. You do have Chuba. You do have Connor. You have these guys that are cheap enough where you can put them in 6 running back rooms. So you're still doing 0 running back stuff. You're still putting together rooms that utilize those early season points and then, build towards the back half of the season. Maybe we're playing running back on the flex a little bit more than we used to, which I think is another thing that is kind of a little icky. Like, well, we should be able to play receiver in the flex because receiver's underpriced and we can, well, what if receivers are underpriced?
Right.
Then maybe we go to running back, start playing running back a little bit more in the flex. And, that's tricky because running back is, you're dealing with these more fragile production-based profiles. But this year we have these rookies too. So I just drafted a team that had, it had TreVeyon Henderson. I got TreVeyon Henderson to fall all the way back to me at the end of the 5th. Then I took Judkins. So my top 2 it's a 0 running back team. TreVeyon Henderson, Judkins, but I ended up going. I ended up taking like a Ramondre and then someone else kind of gross. There's actually Warren. Apologies to my buddy Jalen Warren, but you're not like oh man, I'm so stacked right now. But then I did another
Warren
team
for that same manner, and it feels so funny because last year
I know he's upside,
and this year I'm like, I could just use some of that
chaperone-y.
Jalen Warren, like those 9 points in week 2,
Yeah.
whatever.
And then I did a similar one because I was back to back out of the 1 hole this morning, and I did I took Judkins again, but then I got Swift, so I reached on Swift and I had him. And then I did I took Charbonnet and someone else pretty chaperone-y with him. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm building in these rooms that are betting on some of the more fragile profiles at various prices, a Pollard and a Swift at the expensive end, a Ramondre and ETN, a Warren, unfortunately, is kind of a fragile, probably more early season tilted profile now. You could do a Tracy. You could do a Pacheco, although I think he's maybe a bit overpriced now, but whatever. But you could do that stuff, and then you're pairing it with some of these upside profiles, but the upside profiles in some cases are your first running backs. Like you can start
Right.
with Henderson Judkins. You can
Right.
start
We
with
flipped
Harvey
it.
Henderson. You're
Right.
flipping it.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
flipping it. So I'm paying a premium for, well, this is interesting, for the most important thing, actually. So yeah, it makes sense why that's now costing
It's a
me a
premium
premium
relative to what we used to do, but
for
it's
what we used to
probably
do.
appropriate. It's probably appropriate given what we need
Maybe
from this
even
format and
underpriced
everything.
still.
Yeah.
You know, because yeah, week 17, man. So I'm paying a premium for that, but then I'm backfilling it with some grosser stuff. This isn't to say that I don't take any of the running backs like early. I do,
Mhm.
but I'm more thinking about, my site's named after an article in which I talk about which early round running backs I want to draft. The early guys have not usually been a huge problem for me mentally. It's being more open minded to some of these mid round guys that have some real warts. And but
Kind of
I
the
think they're cheap
antithesis
enough
of
now.
legendary. Yeah, kind of the antithesis of legendary upside,
Yeah,
right? We know, like, you don't even have to blink and you're like, yeah, he doesn't have it, right? On to the next. But that doesn't mean that they can't have utility on our
right.
teams given the
Utility.
pricing that we have now.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm trying to think through that kind of 2v2 game and understand, like, exactly where the wide receiver, like, it can't be arbitrary. It can't be like, well, it's the third round, so I should take a receiver.
Right.
Even
I
though I do think it's
genuinely
a good
did
time
that.
to take a receiver right
Right,
now.
right. But I think I genuinely did a lot of that in last year, in many past seasons, where I was just like, this is what you're supposed to, like you said, drew arbitrary lines in the sand, as opposed to like being really fluid. That's what I'm excited about this year more so than any, because I am still going to kind of generally be underweight early running back, but I'm going to draft most of the early running backs. I'm just going to like figure out how to fit them all into my portfolio, right, and fit them onto the right kind of teams. And as opposed to last year's being like, nope, got a wide receiver, right? Like, this is just what we do. You have to do this. I'm not doing that so much. I am still drafting with some of these principles because I think that they're good for the current market. I think they're good for just like how best ball fundamentally works, right? In the fact that I can't pick anyone up, and I'm trying to, like, contingent value is just like the most important thing, chaos and contingent value. That's good for like the way that we generally like to draft, but mixing and matching it a little bit more, especially because of these market dynamics we've had. Like, mix in some, like, Gibbs is kind of my favorite one. He's also the cheapest out of all the,
Mhm.
like, I can move Gibbs. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, the guy on the Lions who's a superstar, David Montgomery's getting older and got hurt, and the Lions defense is going to be back better now. Like, who knows? Like, Aaron, not Aaron Glenn, but Ben Johnson is gone. Well, Aaron Glenn's gone too, but Ben Johnson is gone. Like, who knows? Right? Right? I can picture this with Jahmyr Gibbs, but Bijan, etc. Like, all these guys. Like, I have drafted Jonathan Taylor. Last year, I fucking just second round Jonathan Taylor. What are you talking about? I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've drafted these guys. And so I think a couple weeks ago, I think I mentioned, like, we did a show and I had literally just minutes before drafted Josh Jacobs. And I'm like, that is just so not how I would like to build things. But I want to construct some of these teams where I'm like, I don't know, with Josh Jacobs, I have 2 fucking superstar wide receivers already. It's like why does the fifth round, right? Why does the fifth round, or why does the eighth round have to be the time when I start to dip my toes in? Like, I can mix and match these things a little bit more.
And you
And I
can
think,
build better
again,
Josh Jacobs teams than
right,
most Josh
build
Jacobs
better
drafted.
and different Josh Jacobs teams than anyone
Yep.
else is going to build. So yeah, I think that kind of sums up a little bit of what I will say, just to kind of close the running, specifically the running back thing. I still just straight up think, given what we talked about with, like, once you get to kind of the 80s, it's like a wasteland of running backs. Like, the
It's different.
we
Yeah.
will get maybe forever the uncertain backfields, like the Jaguars, like the Cowboys, like the whoever, pick your poison, and the contingent value bets, right? Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, whatever, Will Shipley. We'll get these
Charbonnet.
guys where Charbonnet, just like always underpriced. And so to the point, I would fall into the trap before of
I'm
being like,
drafting Rashad White now.
right. Like it's like I
It's a
don't know,
contingency
man.
bet.
Yeah, if Bucky goes down, like we don't have to like it, but Rashad White's gonna score fantasy points, dude. And
Yeah.
Bucky's 180 pounds. But I don't think the market may ever, at least not in the near future, be able to appropriately price contingent value specifically at the running back position. And so the trap I would fall into before was like, here's these 10 running backs that are all underpriced after pick 100. And right, these are all the best picks. So just take all the best picks. And it's like, yeah, but like you drafted 7 dudes who all need an injury to like score points.
Yeah.
You got to be able to like, how do you get when Tyler Algier is playing in week 17 without Bijan Robinson? How do you get to week 17 with him? Like you might need Joe Mixon or you might need Josh Jacobs or whatever on that team. And so I think this year there's a little bit more of that. I also think the market just sets up a little bit better for it too.
Yeah, I agree. I think to the early round discussion, when I'm thinking like what can I get later, part of the middle round stuff, and this is probably what makes me the most nervous, honestly, about taking these middle round running backs, is that I'm actually starting to think like they're probably better picks in the early round running backs, given what isn't available later at receiver.
Right.
So at receiver, like, you can get one of these unbelievable talents at receiver. I mean, Nico Collins is going at the 1-2 turn. This dude is a superstar. He's a clear number one receiver on his team. Mm-hmm. He was easily the number one receiver on his team last year with a healthy Tank Dell, who became the number 3 behind Diggs. He was still the dude. Nico Collins was a smash. Mm-hmm. And he's getting pushed down now to the 1-2 turn. I mean, it's like this is a player. I'm not saying he should like go here necessarily, right? But it's a player who, like, if we just like scrambled up a bunch of seasons and then you're like, in one of these seasons, Nico Collins going at like the 103 or the 104, I'd be like, cool, yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm. He's really good, so you get him. And it's like, okay, you can take him or, a Devon Achane or a Henry or even a McCaffrey. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, I know McCaffrey's tricky because the ceiling's so high. If he's McCaffrey, it could be like, well, McCaffrey should have been the 101. So it's a little different. But like a Genty, I love Genty. Love Genty. Was hammering Genty in the pre-best ball stuff because I thought he was going to be a mid-first round type of guy in a ton of outcomes because the Bears would have scooped him probably if the Raiders didn't take him. Mm-hmm. And we'd be drafting him even higher. But man, like, you're telling me that like I get Genty and then I have to go figure out receiver in the 4th round, but you get Neighbors or Puka or Amon-Ra or Nico, and then you're pairing that with Brees. You're pairing that with Amari and Hampton.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned Brees.
Yeah. So that's where I'm like, I want that 2v2, man. Give me that receiver and Brees. And then, you're taking like Genty and I mean,
DJ Moore,
maybe a Devontae Smith.
Smith, who I really like, Devontae Smith, but
yeah, he's good.
Can also acknowledge what he is.
Or
right?
Worthy, Genty Worthy versus like Puka Brees.
Right.
I'm taking Puka Brees, man.
Right. Jamison Williams. Right. You're taking those guys in the 4th.
I'm taking Genty Jamo versus Puka Brees.
Yeah, come on.
Holy shit. Give me Puka Brees
and Puka were both literally 1st round picks last season. So like we know that, like,
that's just crazy.
Yeah, that's there is no real path for Jamo.
Even if you say Evans, even if you want to do Evans, Genty Evans versus Puka Brees.
Yeah.
Give me Puka Brees. What are we doing?
I think it's one of the most
I think Brees Hall is an absolute smash. Yeah. But you could do this with other guys in the
Isaiah Davis is going to touch the field, don't you know? Oh, no. So Brees can't be a smash in the 4th round. They're going to Aaron Glenn wants to play all three of those running backs. How could Brees ever get there?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that's the, you could do it in the 5th with like an RJ Harvey. You could do like it's like, do you want like Calvin Ridley, right? One of these 1st round running backs in Calvin Ridley, or one of the first round receiver, like the CD Lamb and an RJ Harvey versus, you know, Bijan and Calvin Ridley. Like, I know that one's maybe a little tougher for regular season stuff, but like at the end of the season, you're flipping over cards and you're showing me teams, week 17 teams. Here's a team that got through. Do you want the team that has Bijan Ridley or the team that has CD RJ Harvey? And you know it's in the final. I know which one I'm taking, man.
I don't think it's close. I think that RJ Harvey has a path to become something somewhat in the stratosphere of what Bijan Robinson is. And yeah, the Cortland Suttons of the world. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
There is no CeeDee Lamb in this range of outcomes for Cortland Sutton. Like, it just that right. Like Calvin Ridley, like they're fine little expensive chap. They're fine. They're wonderful au pairs. Okay, they do a great job. They're just not going to be
glowing
CeeDee
recommendation.
Lamb. Yeah, 100%. You go to their, I don't know what I was like, I don't know what the Rover.
It's it can be word of mouth. Depends.
Yeah,
Depends
I don't know what the Rover equivalent is for au pairs. But you got 5 stars, right?
You're stunmonster.com looking up over.
Yeah, like their LinkedIn profile. Excellent.
LinkedIn, but I bet there's some au pairs on LinkedIn.
Of course. But like there's just no scenario. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the defining parts about the season and why this conversation about the Harveys and the Mixons and the Chubas and the Ken Walkers and the Camaras and stuff is so important from this lens of roster construction. Is as much as we've loved early wide receiver for years, I just don't remember something like this. Like the depth of elite superstar at the top of wide receiver is, and then like nothing. Like,
done.
Yeah. Dude, done. When AJ Brown or I guess Ladd goes after it. And like, look, I like T. Higgins. I like Garrett Wilson. Those are good football players. But like AJ Brown is one of the best wide receivers on planet Earth. And I can get him with a guy who's better than him in the first round, right? Like I can get like this insane combination, or Brock Bowers might be the greatest the greatest receiving tight end of all time. Trey McBride is on a somewhat similar path of being this dominant receiving tight end like we've never seen since Travis Kelce. It's like I can get those guys with CeeDee Lamb, with Justin Jefferson, with Puka Nacua, by the way, led the NFL in yards per route run last year. Puka Nacua on the Rams. Like
Puka Nacua, like literally, like there are how do you have any trouble believing at the end of the 2025 season that Puka Nacua is he is viewed as the best wide receiver in the league? And it's not really discussion.
He has 9 touchdowns in 2 seasons. If he scored touchdowns at all over the course of the last 2 seasons, we would be like, yeah, why isn't Puka going in the top 3 again? Like, why?
Yeah. Puka's the 101. Yeah. 2026, Puka could be the 101. Of course he could. CD could be the 101. Of course. Jefferson, obviously. Chase is the 101. These dudes are like, to me, that's like such a tier. And then there's like a little bit of a tier break to like Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Nico. Neighbors could potentially maybe even be in his own tier because he does have that upside to be seen as like that clear-cut best receiver in the league.
If the Giants are not a stone disaster, Neighbors can but it's just we all suspect that the Giants will be a disaster.
Totally. Then I think you have a bit of a tier break after Collins to Thomas. It's like kind of a mini tier break, but I think Thomas is in his own tier. Yeah, because then I think there's a little bit of a tier break to London, Brown, McConkey, and honestly, I think Rashee Rice might be in that tier.
I'm with you.
And then I think there's a tier break, and then it's probably the name of that tier is T. Higgins, and then it's like, and then it's like, all right, man, like here's some guys who are probably the wide receiver 12,
talented volume hogs, kind of, right? Like Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, aging Tyreek Hill, JSN, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans. It's like
Tyreek's a little different because he could be much higher, but he's a bit much lower. So there's like a risk,
last
kind
year
of binary thing happening.
He's the price is wrong, right?
The price is wrong, but we don't know which way.
He's a Happy Gilmore. The price is wrong, bitch. But it's just we don't know, right? Is should he be the 105 or should he go at pick 80? Like I have no idea.
But like Devontae Adams, like there's Devontae Adams. Let's like we're doing weekly ranks, like just putting myself doing weekly ranks. Like Devontae Adams, wide receiver 16,
right?
You know,
I just like feel
but pretty regularly.
You're just like, cool, he's on my team. I'm happy about it.
Glad I have him.
Like I'm
Yeah.
getting this I'm getting that Devontae, like Devontae's never going to be, you know, a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy, but like I don't know, he's on the Rams, and if he's still Devontae Adams like he has been for the last several years, like that seems good, right? Like
Yeah.
give me 25% of the Rams targets, cool. Like,
And by the way, I think he's a totally fine pick. Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a fade. I'm just saying
but he's not Brian Thomas.
It's not anywhere near, like you have these guys at the top where you're like, it's deep. There's like a deep group of dudes who you're like, this guy could be the number 1 receiver. But then it's pretty quick. It's pretty clear when that ends.
Last year we got to like AJ Brown at like, and no offense, I mean AJ Brown is a real life absolute superstar. Something truly catastrophic would have to happen to the Eagles for him to be the wide receiver 1 overall, and he was going at like 107 last year. Now Brian Thomas is going 13th, going in the 2nd round of drafts, and like if Liam Cohen is the truth,
it's a little harder to see, but it could be.
You have to squint. But I mean, if the Jags defense still stinks, which I think it does, and if Liam Cohen is as good as we think Liam Cohen is, like, I don't know, why can't he? Why can't he have the
I was
crazy
listening
170 target season?
To a Jags beat writer talk about him, and he was I think it's Jonathan Shipley, because Jordan Shipley was a
John Shipley.
Mm-hmm. John Shipley, yeah, okay. So Jonathan Shipley was talking about the way the new coaching staff was looking at the way Thomas had been deployed previously, and they were like pleased with. They were like, I like that they put him in the slot some. I like that it wasn't just deep threat stuff. Like Brian Thomas can do everything, and he showed that he can do that last year, and they were planning to build on that usage. So that's like where you go, you know, if Brian Thomas is playing a mix of the Chris Godwin and Mike Evans roles in the Liam Cohen offense, he could be the wide receiver 1. Like he's not the best receiver in the league, but he could be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I think that's realistic. It's a little bit more of a stretch, but that's to me where I think he's kind of in his own tier. Like I just don't think Drake London could be the wide receiver 1. I don't really think AJ Brown could be the wide receiver 1. Mm-hmm. Maybe McConkey, but like probably they're not gonna pass enough. You know, even if he's got just an insane targets per route run or something, he probably won't get anywhere near enough routes. So you're like already to this tier by the 2nd round where you're like, it's over. But the first tier lasted damn near to the end of the first. So I'm like, I don't know. Like, give me one of those guys. Why do I have to not take one of the guys who, you know, in the first round I have an almost equal chance of having wide receiver 1 as the 101?
Right.
Why don't I do that? That sounds like a good idea.
For 13 picks, you have a chance of getting the wide receiver 1. And if you pick at the end of the first round, you might have 2 cracks of getting the wide receiver 1. That is my biggest struggle. Like, and I want to be over it. Normally there's like, I can draw a line where I'm like, as much as I love wide receivers, this guy that's going in the first, I'm like, not that excited about him. Right. This year, I'm like you said, it's definitely through Ladd actually for me, but like specifically through Brian Thomas, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, how do I get overweight all of these guys? And there's one way, and there's one way. It's take away some of the running back exposure, right? And so what that leads to is this whole like roster construction idea. So what's the trickle down effect? Okay, we talked about the like 4th, you know, like Brees, Hampton, Chuba, Ken, right? We talked about like the running back range there. The other thing is again in that the later running back pocket is where I get to quarterback, where I'm just like, look, I mean, I do have a bunch of Jalen Hurts because, like you said, he kind of
he's so underpriced. Yeah,
he keeps falling to the 5th round,
it's
and
crazy.
I'm like, I don't have to have AJ Brown or Devontae Smith to take him, but I do like both of those guys, so I take them fairly frequently. I got roasted in the moment a couple weeks ago I was just doing a solo draft stream, and I took Terry. I don't even really like Terry, but he kind of fell, whatever. So I got some exposure to Terry, and then Jaden Daniels was there in the 4th round, and people were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you passed on Jaden Daniels." I took Devontae Smith because I was like, you know, Jalen Hurts has been falling a lot here, and I'm gonna I would rather have Devontae Hurts on this team than Daniels and Ridley, right, or whatever. And so I did it, and Hurts falls all the way back, and the people are like, oh, they're straight roasting me, like, I can't believe who would ever not take Jaden Daniels there. And I'm like, you know, just wait, just give it 3 minutes, I'll be back on the clock, and Jalen Hurts will be here, right? And he was, and then they're like, oh, okay, hand up, you were right, or whatever. So Hurts is kind of an exception, but that tier, the way the quarterbacks drop in, where like I don't really like tight end, I don't really like running back, wide receivers, whatever. Right. Like I like Downs, I like Trey Harris, I like Jaden Higgins, I like some of the guys fine, but I'm not like, you know, out over my skis for any of those guys in that range. It's like quarterback falls in there to this beautiful, like just double tap quarterback from pick 80 to pick 120, and you get two fucking studs, like absolute studs. You could set up a million different stacks with, you can get Ladd, you can get London, you can get you can get Diggs if you want to stack May, you can back stack May, you can take Ladd and get Herbert, you can take Trey Harris and get Trey. Like there's just so many awesome ways to get quarterback in that range that like when we're talking about a draft plan, I kind of like always go in. It's right. You got CD. It's like, well, Dak goes in that range. Like I got so many guys I can mix through at quarterback. Like I said, from like Baker to Herbert or May or whatever.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That range is just awesome. And I think, people kind of like the profiles are kind of similar, so I don't really care about reaching within the range, but you don't need to reach before the range, because like I'll kind of push if I have like a guy like a Baker, right, or I've got Purdy double stacked. I'm like, I could reach and secure that here. I'm like, no, I'm just going to push into the range, and I will end up with a couple guys that I like, because you can also do Trevor Lawrence and backstack him.
Love Lawrence.
You can do Drake May and backstack him. I was gonna mention May.
Of course, I like May. I got May in like the 90s, brother. Like I'm in. We are on. We are team. Yeah. We are agreeing too much.
The May stuff's a lot more fun this year. Last year, I was like, just like, who's with me? Yeah. I was like, no, I'm not with you.
You're like, I'm trying to think of what there's like Disney or video, like cartoons or whatever. Yeah, where like one of the minions or something, goes up and like does this, and they're all like, no, that was you.
This year we're all here together.
We're all slapping it up on the Drake Man, especially when Stephon Diggs is out being absolute peak fucking Stephon Diggs. Like this guy is out there,
not just a guy you want dating your sister. I think that take's been validated.
For anybody that hasn't seen that, I won't go into it.
Everyone who's watching, that's 100% of people watching this have also watched that video. I think
the video of the Vikings locker room where they went around. So that's
talking about the boat video.
Yes, him doing coke on the boat with a bunch of girls is hilarious. But also, people are like, oh, are they going to cut Stephon Diggs? I'm like, they cannot. Have you seen their wide receiver room? You don't go into the Stephon Diggs business not knowing what you're getting yourself into. It's like going into the Tyreek Hill business or going into the right. It's like you signed up for this, man. Like he's going to be Stephon Diggs. So you can't cut him when he acts like Stephon Diggs, right? And they have it is what it is. Stephon Diggs is going to be a Patriot. But if you haven't seen it, this is even better than the recent video that we just saw when he was on the Vikings. The NFL teams do these silly, like the reporters go in the locker room, ask the players like silly questions, like about each other, right? Like, who's the best cook and, who's the best basketball player and all that different stuff. They asked in the Vikings locker room, which player would you least like to date your sister? Right? Would you least be excited about dating your sister? Every single player, normally they have to think about it, right? They're like, who's the best basketball player? So-and-so. Every single player snap called Diggs on that question. Straight up, Diggs. Every guy, Diggs. They so much so that the reporter went to Stephon Diggs and was like, every guy said you for this question. And he was like,
I'm a nice guy.
He like acted offended. He's like, what the fuck? What do you mean? And then he was like, but I get it. He's like, I get it.
I've always found Stephon Diggs kind of charming, to be honest. But
he's not fake. He's not like a bad guy. He's not, he's not Tyreek Hill or whatever.
It's different, right? Yeah. There's like the diva profiles come in different flavors. I've always kind of found him to be.
Randy Moss was a diva, right? But
I liked Randy Moss. Randy Moss was
one of my favorite football players ever.
He paid a fine, and they asked him I was paying it, and he said straight cash, homie. That's hilarious.
I'm gonna wear it next week. I have a Randy Moss shirt that says straight cash, homie.
That's just a funny and cool thing to say.
It's so awesome.
I mean, maybe it's kind of a dick thing to say, but also it's a hilarious thing to say. So I'm in. It's that dick. It's the brand of like of a dick thing to say that has enough like because they're finding him. He's like, this is stupid. It's all he's kind of commenting on the legitimacy without saying it. I enjoy it immensely.
So good. But anyway, the side Diggs rant, because Stephon Diggs is just a caricature of an NFL wide receiver. But even like beyond this range, again, like from our roster construction theme, why it's so hard for me to like take quarterbacks when there's like a priority, either running back, wide receiver, or tight end in those first 4 rounds or something, is like, even if we push this, like, look, Geno Smith's not going to be a top 5 quarterback, I don't think. But like, I don't know, man, in the 160s, Geno on this Raiders team with Bowers and Myers and Genty, and I'm like, that seems too cheap, right? Like you said, Trevor Lawrence. I take Bryce Young. Like I take all these guys in the 130s, 40s, 140s, 150s. It's like there's just so many good quarterback options at such good prices, and I'm so flexible in my draft. When I'm putting together my teams, I'm like, I took T-Mac, I took Diggs, I took Trey Harris. It's like, I took Juwan Jennings. Like, who fucking cares what quarterback? I'm going to get multiple of these guys. They're going to be stacked, and I'm going to probably get them at good prices. So I don't need to do Jaden Daniels. Like, who doesn't like Jaden Daniels? But like, why do I need to spend the premium like at too much? Right? I'm not saying full fade Jaden Daniels, but why do I need to spend the premium very often when there's just like a 20 like genuinely like 15 to 20 quarterbacks I like at cheap prices?
That's how I kind of was thinking about it, but as I was thinking through like what can I get later and all that, and trying to figure out like the value of these elites, relative to what's available later. Like you do have a Justin Fields, who could potentially give you a little bit of that profile. You do actually have Anthony Richardson, who probably won't be playing the week you need it, but is that profile when he plays. You have Drake May, who's not like a true dual threat, but will give you some on the ground. Bo Nix, somewhat similar. Caleb Williams, maybe, but also has some of that breakout profile element in, the improving offense with the new weapons and all that.
I still think Lawrence has some of that in him. Maybe I'm just being this total optimist.
He's more like a Baker type of bet.
But like a Baker on steroids from a runner perspective. But like Baker was the QB3 like in like a lot of metrics last year in fantasy. It's like I could. There's also obviously the Liam Cohen parallels, but like I don't know, man. If Liam Cohen is for real and it's BTJ and Hunter and like I think Diami can play.
There's definitely upside. I think Dak has a lot of upside. Yeah, Dak has been one of those guys. So there's definitely upside later, but I do think that Daniels, Allen, Lamar, Hurts give you that type of rushing, that kind of consistent access to the spike week is, I guess, what I've. It's not that these other dudes can't spike real high. It's not that like we've seen like with a guy like Joe Burrow where it's just like he goes nuts for an extended stretch. So it's not like the pocket passers are kind of volatile, but they don't necessarily be truly volatile week to week. It's like everything kind of came together for that stretch of a season, and then it's like that's the dude. So I think there's like a Dak and a Lawrence, like those guys can do that. They could be that guy. So there's upside in that sense. But when you think about like just the likelihood that you have the guy, like the predictability of Lamar, Daniels, Hurts, Allen being that guy, and then the predictability week to week that you'll have access to it, not every week, but that there's just like in any given week, a very high likelihood. Like these guys are healthy. They're going to be, all 4 of those guys are going to be in like the top 5-6 receivers, or 5-6 quarterbacks, like almost every week. Like that's how we're going to have it ranked heading into the week. So that's where I do think that those elites are priced pretty reasonably, and they're cheaper on Underdog than on DraftKings. Hurts actually goes like even cheaper on DraftKings for some reason. It's insane. He's a smash there, but
in the 50s.
Yeah, in the 50s. You can get Allen like and Lamar like much cheaper on Underdog than they're going on DraftKings. And I've come around to those. I'm trying to get more of those guys because I think that one, they, like I said, have access to that ceiling on a more consistent basis. And then 2, I don't know that, like you talk about Geno and stuff, like I maybe could take a third quarterback with an elite. Like I'm starting to wonder if I can do that as well, because of no one builds like that. First of all, like no one builds like that. And we had Jaden Daniels last year. He got hurt against Carolina, so he only put up 5 points in that week. He had, I think he must have gotten hurt because he had 2 attempts. Pittsburgh, he only scores 8 points. He has 13 points against the Eagles. And then back in week 2, and I know he was a rookie in the second game, but he only scored 13 points. So you actually do have floor games from these guys. It's just that like the most likely outcome and the high end outcomes are sick. So covering a week 15 dud with a third quarterback or covering a week 16 dud with a third quarterback is maybe more viable than we've been thinking, because we're thinking like, I don't need that guy, but it's like, what if you do, and you're one of the only Jaden Daniels teams to get through, or like what Hurts a couple years ago was like the nuts, and then he got hurt and missed week 16 and 17, but you still have quarterback covered, and every other Hurts team is dead. There's like stuff like that. I'm kind of thinking like part of the reason I haven't been doing the elites is because I'd rather just do the 3 quarterback builds, and there's so many good quarterbacks there. I'm like, what if I just am better at quarterback than most other teams? Probably too good at quarterback for the regular season, but then when we get to the playoffs, I'm like way more robust at quarterback. A lot of like weird stuff can happen at quarterback for me that I'm going to look pretty different than the other teams with this quarterback. And, you talk about like the massive Burrow chalk and everything last year.
Yeah.
That's not such a bad thing. Like, you happen to have the guy who got everyone to the playoffs. You have more outs than they do to separate.
I struggle so much with that, and I know we've gone back and forth on a lot, so we don't got to rehash the quarterback thing. But it's not even just because of quarterback. It's specifically because I don't like to spend too many roster spots, not just like draft capital. There's 2 different things, right? Spending draft capital on a position is one thing. Spending a certain amount of roster spots on a position, especially on underdog when we only have 18, like spending 6 roster spots on the onesies, right, which would be quarterback and tight end. I know tight end can technically fill the flex, but if fucking Cade Otton is hitting my flex several times, my team is probably just not very good. So I don't like to treat them. It is a luxury that they could possibly fill the flex, right? It is not something I'm factoring into their onesie positions. In 18 rounds, especially, it's really tough for me to get to 6 of them. And if I don't get Bowers, McBride, or Kittle, I'm generally taking 3 tight ends on that team. And so then it's like, Jesus, now I'm taking 6, and I'm taking, if I do 3 quarterback and I'm doing 3 tight end, that's 33% of my roster for 2 starting lineup spots, theoretically, that I'm building in there, right? So now I've put a lot of pressure on the hits that all my running backs and wide receivers need to be, but not just like hits overall. They also then need to be consistent hits in those playoff weeks, because I only got 12, right? I only got 12 to fill 5 spots, right? I got to fill 2 running backs, 6 spots, 12 to 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a flex, and I got 12 dudes. So it's like, man, that layering aspect becomes really difficult when you're like, I got to start half these guys, and not just like start them. They got to have big games, right? Because we're talking about one out of, just using Best Ball Mania, I got to finish first out of 16 in week 15, first out of 16 in week 16, and then first out of 500 people in week 17. And I only got 12 dudes to do it. That it's just like that delicate balance. And so I've been leaning still more into, I have done a bunch of 3 tight ends, but I know you and I've talked about, like, I'm trying to draft a higher quantity of running backs. So I'm willing to maybe forego a little bit of the wide receiver volume.
I'm doing it with receiver too. Yeah. Today I built 2 3-6-6-3s.
And just I need, like, I have not drafted a team on underdog. I have not drafted a best ball team, period, that does not have at least 6 running backs on any site so far this year. And I'm not saying that that's like a rule or whatever. It's just how my drafts have kind of shaken out, right? I'm literally, after we're done here, I'm doing a robust running back draft for fun to see it on stream. So I'm not going to take 6 on that team. But like in general, like even like I took Jahmyr Gibbs, 6 running back room, right? Because that I want to have the ability to do like what you talked about at quarterback, but at 2 running back spots and also a flex position, to where I'm like, I got 6 or 7 of these dudes. It's like, oh, Gibbs had a bad game. Oh, but Bijan missed that game. So it's like you got Algier, right, popped up for 25 in that week. Or Chuba missed that game. So you got Dowdle, right, that popped in, and I can just like mix and match. And then I get to the finals and I have this stable of running backs that's like, yeah, they are probably going to hit my flex. So I might need 3 of them. So I'm going to need more than 5 of these dudes to play there. And like something's just got to give. And a lot of the times it's quarterback for me. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's how I'm kind of putting things together.
I totally get what you're saying. I think the thing for me, like, I don't want to have my elites always be like 3 quarterback teams. That's not what I'm saying. But I guess I'm trying to not use the 3rd quarterback thing or the prices that I like later at quarterback to then say, well, like, I shouldn't take these early quarterbacks, because I'm not actually, when I'm doing that, I'm not actually saying that I think I can get profiles like these later or even close to them. I can't. I know I can't. These
Right.
guys are a different type of bet, a quarterback that isn't
Lamar
available
did not
later.
have a dud last year.
Yeah.
Lamar had 4. What we differentiate between spike weeks and nuclear weeks. It's basically like is there a standard deviation or 2 standard deviations above what the like usable, top 12 score would be. So 17 usable weeks, 0 duds, meaning he never finished below like that threshold. Half the games, 8 times, he spiked. So he was like adding a bunch of points to your lineup. And then 4 of those, he went like totally nuclear. Lamar Jackson was just like absolutely unbelievable last year from a points per game added perspective.
Yeah.
He added 8 points to your lineup per game. Lamar did. Second in that metric is Baker at 5. It's just like absolutely, sorry, Allen is at 6, but Allen added 6 points. Lamar added 8. There's like hardly even that many that added points to your lineup. That dude added 8 per game. Lamar did. And they threw the ball 480 times. They didn't even throw.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, and I don't want to get, I've been kind of more like elite tight ends, which I want to get to. I got to go in like 10 minutes, but I want to
just got to hit
try to squeeze that in quickly. But I've been more on elite tight end, and the discourse has become a little bit like elite tight end versus elite quarterback. And I don't want to. Elite quarterback also good. I think this is kind of what I'm just like. I don't want to get like, boxed into a strategy because it's sort of like pitted against a strategy I like slightly better. Like I like both. I think I've like on further reflection, I like both.
On further reflection, you like Brock Bowers and Lamar Jackson to be on on teams
and maybe on the same team as going to this idea of like, I don't necessarily need to like satisfy a 3 and 5 or a 4 and 7 kind of golden rule thing. Like I can, that not that was bad, but the prices have changed. And so but yeah, I mean, if you look at the thing you talk about, like the running back depth, that makes sense. And I think it can happen in any number of ways. Like this stuff's going to be so chaotic. But why did, one of the reasons that I was talking about thinking about the 3rd quarterback a little bit more and how there can be chaos there in the playoff weeks and in the regular season. You can have a guy miss a stretch and, that 3rd quarterback can really help you. The reason I'm starting to think about that more is when I look at where are guys like maybe like 30 picks underpriced. It's quarterback.
Yeah.
It's quarterback. Like you look at, like, we talk about Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence goes at 134. I think he should be in the 1 teens. And if you told me that Trevor Lawrence cost me a pick in the 90s, I would take him there. I would just take him there because he's like, that's okay. That's what Trevor Lawrence costs. And when I have Brian Thomas, I'll take, I will have less, but like, I'll take some Trevor Lawrence, kind of like how I treat Baker Mayfield, who I think is overpriced. Or Bo Nix was kind of going in the early 90s. I thought he was a little overpriced. He's dropped a little, but I don't take Bo Nix quite as often because he's one of the more expensive guys in the group, but I'll take him. I don't take Goff so much because he does go in the 1 teens. And to me, it's like, he's the same as Trevor Lawrence, but like, I'll take him some. So, you've got guys, you get down to Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott has moved up. He was in that same range. But he should have always been, he's in the 1 teens now. Yeah. He should have been in the 1 teens the whole time, but there's only so many quarterbacks. And so it's like, there's enough quarterbacks where I think if we were just like setting salaries for these guys, there's enough quarterbacks who should all get like a salary equivalent to an ADP of around pick 100. That some of them get pushed down to like pick 130, pick 140. And then in your given draft, they might be a faller where you're getting a guy in the 150s And it's like, all right, man, fine, I'll do it. I'm taking a third. It's just the it's the pricing. It's the pricing. Like, I find it's less likely that I'm sitting there with like, oh, I was going to take 5 running backs, but God, here I am, sitting at like 140, and Bayshaw Tootin staring me in the face. So I'm gonna take him. Maybe if he fumbles again, that'll happen. But for now, we're not really seeing that. So I'm I'm more I'm letting the prices kind of push me off of like what I used to think. Like, I would never have taken a third with an elite, but if you're gonna like give me a big time price discount on where I think this guy's efficiently priced, then why wouldn't I do that? And then I can see how it would actually work and play out. It's not like a wasted pick. And this is again like with the pricing is changing every year, and so the rules of thumb don't really account for like, hey, should you take a third quarterback on this team when you've already spent this much? Probably not. But what if a guy's going 50 picks after where you think he should have gone?
Right.
And you have him stacked. Now should you take a third quarterback?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, probably yeah. Actually, you would be it might be like crazy not to.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm trying to
get the best picks together on the same team, and like all this roster construction stuff like kind of goes out the window. Like if you're just like you said, if I think this guy is generally like a pick 100 player and you're giving him to me at pick 155, it's like, look, I know I got Lamar and Lawrence on this team already, but like, what the hell, man? Like, this doesn't make any. And like you said, I got him. He fits the team, right? I didn't just take this random one-off quarterback, because that is a trap. It's easy to fall into. You're like, Jared Goff fell 14 picks past ADP. I don't have a fucking lion, but I can't pass. And it's like, actually, you're not helping your
especially
team.
if there's other guys available later. There's
Right.
some times where a falling unstacked guy, again, I am kind of coming, but I'm talking more in the Geno Smith range.
Exactly.
Because he's
like,
an awesome
I
pick.
need a quarterback, and then this guy did fall, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'll figure it out, right? Dante Thornton or whatever, come
Totally.
on, like come
Trey
on down.
Tucker, whatever. Yeah.
But I agree on the quarterback thing. We never really mentioned. I just want to shout him out because I'm about to move him up today. Brock Purdy. He's a pick that never came up in this discussion. That's also in that range that I think is awesome.
There's so many good picks in that range.
Quickly polished tight end.
Okay.
I don't know
I'll go real quick. Take Brock Bowers. Take Trey McBride. Take George Kittle. Log off.
Yeah, I don't see. I have taken a little bit of Sam Laporta because he will fall sometimes, but I'm like behind on everybody until Berg.
I like Hawkinson. I do like Hawkinson, but
yeah, I'm very lukewarm on TJ Hawkinson. But I think tight end is actually like the easiest one. So it's probably good that we left it for like a 30-second clip at the end, because I think the 3 elite guys at the top all fucking rock. They're all awesome. They could all define this best ball season. And then it's kind of a bunch of guys that are like, could they pop up for some good games? Yeah. Like, it's fine. But then there's a bunch of value, similar to the quarterback thing, where I'm like, I want my elites, right? I want to get my Lamars, just like I want to get my Kittles and I want to get my McBrides. But then I kind of want to play, right? Like we talked about with quarterback. Like, I could do May. I could do Ferguson. I could do Goddard. I could do Likely, who, by the way, is going to be Likely's about to be an all-pro, by the way, if you listen to Harbaugh, right? I could do Gesicki. I could do Ingram when he falls. I could do,
Dude, Ingram, I think, doesn't need to fall. I kind of had a thing. I was looking at Ingram the other day. We raised him up. Like, target competitions: Cortland Sutton, Pat Bryant, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, like Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims might lose snaps to RJ Harvey. I mean, the Joker stuff. Evan Ingram might be their Joker. Like, I don't even know what a Joker is at this point, but like,
John Payton doesn't know what he's.
I don't think anyone knows.
It just sounds cool.
Evan Ingram. We know he can earn targets underneath. We know Bo Nix likes to throw short and he's accurate. We know that Sean Payton tends to utilize the tight end. What we don't know is how many routes Evan Ingram's going to run. Is he the new Jared Cook, or is he a new legit every down starting tight end? And I think I basically had a thing of like, he could be the every down starting tight end on a team that is going to put up a lot of points. a pretty stable situation, good coaching, good enough quarterback play, great offensive line, and no one where you're like, well, this guy could become like a 30% target dominant guy, and Evan Ingram can't get targets. Like, no, he'll get his targets. It's just how many routes does he run? So wide range of outcomes a little bit, but it's not so wide. Like Evan Ingram, it's not like they're gonna like bring back Greg Dulcich and put him in. Like he's gonna have a role. It's just that he might have a role kind of equivalent to a guy you wish you took more in like the 120s or the 130s, and you took him at, the 1 teens or something. But I think he could have a role. I think his role could be better than Sam Laporta's.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's crazy at all. It's also just like a hand in glove fit with Bo Nix, right? This low A dot, like chain mover, check down, yak tight end that is Bo Nix like calling card, right? That's like what he does best is like, completion percentage leader at Oregon, all this, like I'm going to throw accurate balls underneath. And he didn't like really have that guy last year. It's like, why can't that be Evan Ingram? And all of a sudden he's like way too cheap. But again, there's like a lot of these, like it's a kind of a choose your own adventure similar to the quarterback thing. Like I said, tight end, I think, since we do have to go, is like really simple. I'm prioritizing those 3 superstars because they are superstars and in truly incredible spots. And then it's like, I'm not saying don't draft Sam Laporta. I'm not saying don't draft these other guys, but those are kind of not big priorities to me. And it fits this roster construction thing, right? Like those other tight ends go in that quarterback window. They go in, maybe where we're taking the Downs or the Trey Harris or the Jaden Higgins or whatever. And then we can double back to, okay, now the quarterbacks are off the board. Now the wide receiver is fucking terrible, right? We get to pick 140, 150. Like, shit, there ain't a wide receiver that I like clicking. Well, guess what? Now we got the tight ends, right? Dallas Goedert, pick 150. Like, yeah, dude, sign me up. Jake Ferguson, pick 145. Sign me up for all of that.
It's a good point. It's like right after the quarterback window is like the tight end window, and it's rich, man. There's a lot of good stuff there. I mean, Dalton Kincaid, I don't like, but I'll take him there. Ferguson, I think, is a good pick.
If something happens to where the Bills just have to throw a lot more this year and Kincaid gets out there, he had Rich Rebar just posted, I think yesterday, he had a 30% target share on when he was on the field running routes. It's just that he only runs like 60% of the routes and doesn't run blocks. So he's not out there ever.
Right.
But who knows, right?
Tyler Warren, by the way, finally, it's taken a while, but like we're basically at ADP on him now. We're a little behind still, but
I'm still behind.
He was we're about 5 picks behind. He was
I just can't take him in front of Likely and Goddard, and like I just can't do it.
I agree, but he's getting closer to the range where he's actually draftable now.
And he'll fall sometimes. Like go to like DraftKings or something, you get backed into a Warren Richardson stack or something, it'll work over there.
Brenton Strange, I still think is pretty well priced. There's a lot of guys, and then that goes all the way through like Hunter Henry, Freiermuth. I'm not buying this, John. I literally do. As much as we were joking around with the dad stuff, that is exactly what happened to this man.
Yes,
Freiermuth's the starting tight end for the Steelers. That's how I'm playing it. Yeah. So there's lots of. I'm trying to take my tight end, especially on underdog. I'm trying to be done at tight end. Maybe not done, but like I don't want to need any of these tight ends like a Mason Taylor or Chigga Okonkwo or Jatavion Sanders. I think they're okay picks, but I would like to have them feel kind of luxury picks rather than me being like, all right, Jatavion Sanders, I'm gonna need you this year. It's just I don't know, man. It feels kind of thin. Theo Johnson is an acceptable pick. And then I like playing on DraftKings where I can get Harold Fannin exposure.
100%. Harold Fannin, if you like one of the Rams guys, right? Either Ferguson takes over for Higbee or Higbee just holds off Ferguson all year.
Yeah.
There's a bunch, but that's it. Tight end is beautiful because it is this little right? It is a it's not square peg round hole. It's like it's the Play-Doh that'll fit in anyone. Like however, choose your own adventure at tight end. Whatever you like to do with the other positions, tight end will fit around it. That's the beauty of it this year. Anything you got before we get?
Well, I make a pretty impassioned case on Bowers. I made one on chip chasing or ADP. I was gonna say ADP chasing is really where I got going, and I also did a whole thing about Trey McBride not scoring touchdowns and how I actually think in a pretty efficient market that's one of the best and easiest ways we could find upside is this guy who's awesome at earning targets and yards. and didn't happen to score touchdowns for 2 years, maybe he scores touchdowns. Like
that's Puka.
You know how
too,
much
by the way, at wide receiver.
What'd you say?
That's Puka too at
Yeah.
wide
Oh,
receiver.
that-
like dude,
Yeah.
the dude has 9 touchdowns in 2 seasons, and like we're just like, oh yeah, Puka is like he's fine. It's like, what if he scores 15 touchdowns? Like
I'm gonna go draft some Puka.
Puka McBride, baby, Puka McBride.
But yeah, so if you want more details on why I think those guys are such good picks, first of all, I am pro tight end eligibility. I think it's helpful to have. I'm not sure how the discourse got to that being bad, but I'm on the side of it being helpful. And then I would also say that the Bowers and McBride profiles are really strong. You can check more of that out in the article. I dove deep on both. And I think all of that section is above the paywall because I didn't have a paywall kicking, I think, till round 3. So if you want the Bowers and McBride thoughts, check it out. Legendary Upside.
I love it. And while we're doing closing with the tight end, I'm shouting out George Kittle. It's like,
oh yeah,
we're just gonna endlessly keep George Kittle cheap. And I for the life of me can't figure it out. Like last year, it's like round 7 George Kittle because I guess the Niners aren't going to throw, and then they did throw, and then now Debo's gone and Ayuk tore his ACL, and nobody really wants. Ricky Pearsall's already hurt in camp. Nobody really wants Juwan Jennings. But if you go look at I forget who it did their defensive rankings, have the Niners as the worst defense in the NFL heading into the season. It's like, so they're going to throw. Who is it going to exactly when it's not going to be George Kittle? Because it just was George Kittle last year. And we're like, that's fine.
Such a smash, man.
He's a 5th round pick. Who cares, right? Nobody cares about
He's George. A 4th round pick on Underdog, on DraftKings, and he's a 5th on. It's funny because on DraftKings, you can go get Hurts just like relentlessly. You just get him in the 5th. And then on Underdog, it's Kittle. You just can take Kittle. But Kittle actually goes slightly earlier on DraftKings. But in either case, I'm just like, the early 5th for me is like, it's a lot of Kittle and a lot of Hurts right now, man.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's about to be a beautiful weekend here, Pat. So we're going to segue on out of here and go enjoy some San Diego-esque weather here in St. Louis, 75 and sunny. But we will see everybody next week. Make sure to use code LEGUP over at Spike Week for 40% off. And we'll talk to you guys next time.